So, welcome to the Kurtuk Resource Center, the 10 Signs of Depression. It's a connection point where we want to have a conversation about the signs of depression. And as we go through this, here is my goal for the setup for each one of these evenings. I'd like to share just a few things that is in your paperwork, and so after I share those things, then we'll have a Q&A time as well. One of the reasons that we're doing that is because we're actually making a video of the presentations so that individuals can watch them later on to write down notes, or they can just watch it as a part of further learning as well. And so that is the biggest reason. So just you're welcome to one of the booklets here, and that has your notes in it as we go along. But I just want to talk about a connection point first, and there's actually two reasons why we call it a connection point here at the Resource Center, Kurtuk Resource Center, and that is we actually want to just take an opportunity for us as individuals to be able to see, hear, look, listen, and understand how we approach things ourselves. And then the second part of it is we want to be able to try to find ways to help others. And I don't know whether you know this or not, but you and I are much better helpers when we are healed ourselves. And so it's a good idea for us to take opportunity to be able to do that. So let's just move forward then. You can actually turn in your booklets if you're following it, because I want to page 2, but I just want to thank you for just being a part of the conversation tonight and in the evening, and the videos to come on depression. It is estimated, as you can see in the booklet, that at least 300 million people around the world suffer from depression, and that is just some of the statistics that are kept. That doesn't really talk about a whole lot to those that maybe either don't know that they're depressed or don't understand what is happening. And sometimes, and we'll talk about it through, I'm sure a number of times through this study here, that many times we just struggle with our day-to-day things. We get up in the morning and we have this checklist, or we have to do things, responsibilities. I think that's one of the things, for example, postpartum depression for mothers. A lot of times they don't even realize what they're going through at that particular time, because they know they have to take care of the baby. They know they have to make sure the baby is fed and diapers are changed and those kinds of things. And so they're just trying to survive day by day and don't really understand what they're struggling with. But depression is a mood disorder, and it actually shows a mental more than physical symptoms. A lot of times physical symptoms will show up later on, but as far as depression in its early stages, more mental. And so we'll be talking about how to see signs of that as we go through. But these can lead to function problems day by day, even without us even realizing. So we want to be able to recognize the signs. We want to be able to help people. We want to be able to work with people, and we want to be able to understand our own situations as well. I didn't have it in the booklet here, but I want to run through some numbers just so you get an idea as well. High school students across this country, actually 31% of high school students at some point in time during their high school years suffer with depression. Now this is actually the Human Health Services that have actually recorded this. Again, this is individuals that have asked in some way, or have noticed, someone has noticed that they needed help. This in no way shows the total number of individuals who have depression or have symptoms of depression. 29% is North Carolina. So nationwide is 31%. 29 is North Carolina alone. Percent of high school students that report they've attempted suicide one or more times at 8% in North Carolina. And there is a direct connection there with the feeling of depression prior to that, 7% nationwide. Just some statistics there. Another one, depression is the leading cause of disability in the United States of people between the ages of 15 and 44. So there is the problem with this conversation that we're going to have in the coming days is this, that treatment is a very, very tricky issue. Because there's a lot of insurances that will not treat or pay for treatment for depression. Once a suicide attempt or something like that happens, then there's a possibility they can get some help. So that's one of the reasons why we here at the Kurchuk Resource Center want to be able to have these conversations and want to be able to do this, because we're in this gap. We're trying to cover this gap between either a clinical counseling situation or even a medical situation that can happen under depression that then sometimes can get paid for. Now, here's the other challenge that we face is sometimes that situation goes far beyond. In other words, the healing of that situation, to get a person thinking more rationally sometimes, to get a person trying to realize and recognize the signs of depression in themselves. Sometimes that healing process goes far beyond what any kind of insurance or anything like that will pay. And so that's why it's so important to have these conversations and to have these notes and these ideas of wanting to pay attention and help each other through this situation. So here's what I want to do. Before we go through the actual 10 signs, I would like to up front be able to share with us some things that will be helpful for us to be able to maybe notice some things in ourselves, but also, more importantly, notice some things in others. And so you can see in your booklet there, we're going to talk about those things. And so there's 4 key components that I want to talk about in this sign. Because, look, most of these things will come up in normal, everyday conversations. And sometimes a person will say something to you, and if you're not really listening, or you're not really paying attention to that, you don't notice the person is actually trying to ask for help. Because they're in fear of, or they're afraid of, or they don't understand why they're feeling that way. And so sometimes they're actually trying to ask for help, and if you and I don't catch it, then it could be an issue. So down the road for that, some of the other statistics, for example, particularly in suicide, that a large part of suicides, they actually there's an attempt before the actual suicide happens, and so in that process, we need to be vigilant about what maybe some early signs are. So here are the 4 components that I want to go through, and like I say, we can do a Q&A after this, and that would be very, very helpful, I'm sure, but I'm going to move through these probably fairly quickly. 1, listening is not just hearing. That's what I was just trying to say. Listening is not just hearing. We need to actually be listening for what the person is saying and what the body language is. And are there key responses, or are there key words that person is using? Key words like, I'm always feeling, or, this frustrates me so much. Every time this happens, this frustrates me so much. Things like that. Or I get so angry when. And so often we get focused on the emotions. In other words, when somebody says, I get so angry when, we get focused on the emotion of anger, and we don't kick aside the emotion of anger at that moment and listen to what is the thing that they get angry about. Because the thing that they get angry about is likely the thing that they may be struggling with in some way, shape, or form. So you always look for those key words and key phrases in someone's speech. And then, of course, we have some further real talk training that we do here at Kurtzuk Resource Center, but in general, we need to learn to understand a person's body language, and we don't have the time to go into that here, and it's not necessarily a big part of this, although it'd be interesting if a Q&A would be a part of that. But we need to try to understand people's body languages and be able to see if they match. In other words, for example, what I was talking about, if someone says, I get angry when, there's a general body language either in their facial expressions, or hand on the hip, or a little bit of a slumped response when they say that, and you'll begin to see that then that matches that they are really angry. What are they angry about? And so you'll begin to see those things. One of the other things about listening to, eye contact is very important. If a person is not ready or willing to give you eye contact, you need to make note of that. It may be something that they want to not share with you. It may be something that they're afraid of. And if you have a rapport with that person, maybe you can ask some questions to open up. And we can talk more about that in other Kurtzuk Resource Center connection points that we have set up. And so eye contact is very, very important. One of the things, I'll just say, for example, in this process, some sort of abuse, in physical, mental, verbal, all those types of sexual, all those types of abuses that happen to a person oftentimes leaves a person not wanting to make eye contact with you. And so they're walking around with guilt and shame. And they don't want you to know that they're walking around in guilt and shame, because if they see themselves walking around with guilt and shame, they're already assuming that you're thinking the same thing about them. And that they're probably judging you already for that situation. And so, it's important to be able to do that, to begin to understand what that is. And here's the number one rule of counseling 101, as it were, or helping people 101, as it were. You just can't be surprised in anything. If you want to get any kind of rapport with a person, if you want to try to understand a person at all, you just can't be surprised when they tell you something that may surprise you when you're hearing it, or may make your heart rate go up in some way, shape, or form. One of the challenges that we need to be able to not be surprised at that really opens up the caring aspect. I care about you. If nothing surprises me, I truly care. I truly want to hear from you. I truly want to be able to try to understand what I'm sensing, or what I'm seeing here. 2, there should be a situational awareness. Now, sometimes you can't use this situational awareness, with people you just meet. There are situations that we'll talk about in this in the further steps of the signs of these things that you may just run into this person at the grocery store, or meet this person on the street, or whatever, and you sense they have an issue. This is a little harder. Situational awareness is a little bit harder in this case, but here's the challenge that we face with depression. It is said that over 80% of individuals who have depression are known to have depression, or are known to see changes in them by a family member or a close friend. So 8 out of 10 people who suffer from depression have already been in some way, shape, or form speaking to a family member or a friend about their feelings or their thoughts, or showing signs that we're going to talk about, and that family member or friend chooses either not to see it or doesn't know how to help. That's the reason that we're having these discussions. And so in this situational awareness, that's what I mean by situational awareness. Sometimes a family member or a friend may be suffering in the same way. In other words, if something has happened to a friend or something has happened to a family member, a loss of a parent, a loss of a sibling, something like that. It could be that more than one of the family are dealing with those things, and it may take somebody from the outside to notice that. The second part of this situational awareness really has to do with conversation review, and I know that sometimes this may be hard for some of us, but even after we leave a conversation, it's still a good idea for us to review what we have said and what has been said to us. And even maybe after the stress of the conversation, or we get the picture out of our mind of how angry the person might be or something like that, then we can calmly think about what they said, what we said, and you may need to go back and respond to that person if you are recognizing something. 3, and part of the reason why we're doing this here is the training. I'm of the opinion personally that we should all take opportunities to learn more about how we view things, how we come up with decisions, how we react, how we're growing, and in that way, be able to help others. And we should always, I think, be interested in serving another person, in serving others in some way, shape, or form. Now, I already mentioned Real Talk. It's another CRC connection point. I think the last part of this training here, I have down here in the notes, respond to, not from. And that's something that may be a little bit more difficult for some of us. In other words, if it's a close friend or a person in the family or something like that, and we know that something has happened to them and they are hurt, what's the first thing we want to do? We want to defend them. And one of the ways we want to defend them is agree with their thoughts and feelings. And so sometimes it's good to have a way to be able to say, yes, I understand you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way. However, from my perspective, we can't respond to this person like that. That's responding from a place of healing and wholeness in your own life, rather than trying to go into the muck and mire of the person's feelings and thoughts. And if that person feels like that you're not for them, you need to start communicating that you are. I'm here for you. I'm on your side. I'm going to walk through this with you. Whatever phrase you want to use, and I'm going to be there for you. However, my goal is to help you through this, to help you get past this, because I want to see you. And then a lot of times we need to reaffirm what we see in that person. I want to see you feeling better. I don't want you to be angry all the time. I don't want you to walk with your head down. I don't, and so my responsibility and my joy as a friend, or my joy as a brother, sister, husband, wife, whatever it is, cousin, teammate, coworker, student, whatever that is, classmate, whatever that is. And so that's being able to respond to and not from taking on the same things. 4th is this relational action, and this might be the hardest one, and there are so many different varieties of this that it's really kind of hard to be able to talk about all of them from this standpoint. But what I mean by be able to take relational action is sometimes people need help, and sometimes you're the only person that can do it. And if you're just going to stand idly by and watch the person go deeper into anger or deeper into frustration, or or act out in some way. We'll talk about all those different responses, as we go through this. All different kinds of responses that we should be aware of. And sometimes that really requires us to step up, even if we're afraid. I've never been here before. I don't know exactly what to do. I don't know exactly how to do this. But I'm going to try whatever I can. And who do I respond to? That's each situation is so different. That's why I think the connection points of real talk that we do, the connection points coming up of being able to how to have healthy relationships in family settings. We're going to be talking about that in the future as well. And so it may be that you need to tell the authorities if somebody wants to literally try to hurt themselves or hurt someone else. If you can't get through, while each situation is different, sometimes you just need to do something. And don't let that person go down the destructive path that they're headed. And so then what do I say? And so that's the reason that we needed a conversation review. A lot of times what I ask is, or what I think of and talk about is, that I think if you're wanting to respond, I think it's important that you have somebody, a dear friend or a close person that you can talk to through before you respond in some way. We've all seen these programs, TV programs, intervention, where either drug, alcohol, or something like that, and the family gets together, and they actually are doing an intervention to the person who has the issue. And so a lot of times that's helpful rather than trying to do a one-on-one. A lot of times it's helpful to get 2 or 3 people on your side and be able to do it together, and then be able to understand where you want to do it, understand why you're doing it. One of the first things, don't just respond and say, well, I need to respond in some way, shape, or form, so I'm just going to do it. You need to have it clear in your mind why you're doing this. And I stated that earlier, maybe that's even something that I like the idea personally of being able to respond to the person first. And what I said earlier, I believe in you, I'm going to walk through this with you, I'm here for you, I want you to be healed, I want you to be whole, I don't want you walking around in anger, those kind of things. And I think it's better to say that to the person first, and then if you need to respond with some friends or family members later on, you can reinforce what you've already said. And because oftentimes when a person is in depression, in particular, they don't hear the first time. It takes multiple times, and sometimes they don't even know what they're hearing until they start a path to healing and recovery in some way, shape, or form. So I know each situation is different, but a large part of the issue, even today, if I could address it, is that friends or family know about the actions or thoughts of an individual and don't do anything about it, and then wish they would have after something dramatic happens. So those situations are things that we can talk about as we go into the Q&A.